Hi guys. Right, so I'm gonna jump straight into it. So I'm gonna say hello to everybody now and leave it at that. Right, so today we are starting hi Susan. Right, so today we're starting the sew along for the Just So Happy right, I always get this mixed up, so I was talking about it earlier on. So it's the Tool Wallet book. I normally say book wallet, but no, it's the wallet book. So yeah, it's actually really big. The size of it is, let's measure, 10 inches wide by 6.5 inches height. And then it's obviously got the like the spine here, and obviously it opens up. Now I'm hoping nothing falls out. I've got my EPP in here, so you've got your clear pocket here, which is on your main outer body. So I will run through everything that you need, because people have been messaging me saying you've given us the cutting out blog, which is up and running, and you guys can basically cut out as much as you want. But I'm not going to be teaching all of it today because there is so much to learn. But they were saying, oh, what's the top clear pocket bit? Well, the top clear pocket bit is this little strip here. It's marginal, but it's like they were trying to figure out what fabrics they needed to use. So I'm going to go through the complete complete wallet with you, and then you can actually work out what you need to. Yes, Fred in the house. Fred is in the house. You can work out what you actually want to cut out the fabric. Which fabrics you want to use. So yeah, so you've got your main outer body, which is obviously which I've used part of the panel with. But some of you are not buying the panel, the mix panel. Well, haven't bought the mix panel. You're going to use your own stash, which is fair because this is a free project anyway to do, and it's so easy and it does come together really easy. And it's great for someone that's been a quilter in the past but want to move over to bag making. So it's got quilting elements into it, so which is really, really good. So the main outer body part has got the clear pocket, and that's on both sides. So that's on the back part of it and on the front. And then you've got two slip pockets here, one slip pocket there and one slip pocket there. I've got my paper clips on there so I organise my EPP. And then you've got your two mesh pockets. I haven't got much in my mesh pockets because when I was actually designing this, I did actually make a bit of a mistake, and I'm going to correct the mistake in the actual sew along. So the mesh will come in week 2, but I want to divide these up so I can put like extra tools inside. So like put my glue stick and stuff in, my glue line, my sew line pen and stuff like that. Once I finished it, I realised I didn't divide the pocket up because there is only one stage you can actually divide this pocket up. So, and I had already gone past that, and I couldn't divide it up as it was when it was sewn together. So, or else I would have had my zip pocket here would have been completely divided up into sections, and I didn't want that really. So yeah, so I'm going to show you how to divide the mesh pocket up. And then also you've got two zip compartments here. So if I open up this one, so really large spaces. And you've got one on this one as well. So you would already know that you will need 4 zips, which obviously you've got zip 1, zip 2, zip 3 and zip 4. You'll need some elastic, obviously, for the closure. And you don't need a cover button, but I wanted to match the fabric from the binding. So I've got a cover button here of a 1 inch or a 19mm will work significant. And then basically it closes up and it's really sturdy. And this spine here, you can make it as big as you want. My spine is only 1 inch because I don't tend to carry much more than what I've got in this pouch here for when I go travelling and take my EPP on holiday and stuff like that. So I'm going to run through everything. So on the blog, it tells you what to cut out. And then I'm going to run through everything that I've interfaced and what I'm not fusing foam or anything to at the moment. So let's start off with the, let's bring that back. Let's start off with what I'm calling the inner page, which is this part here. But that won't be tackled until starting next week. But I want to get you guys to know what you actually need to cut out. Right, so you got your spine, which is I have to keep this over here, don't I? Right, so you've got your spine here. You need to interface that piece. That is vital because that gives it structure, and it basically, so you can't squash it together. You do need to actually interface that. I've used G700 Vaseline interfacing, but you can use you don't take it to hockey. No, I don't take it to hockey because I'm one of the loudest supporters, and you can probably gather that, Susan. I'm one of the loudest screaming at the fans and screaming at the players, so no, I don't take it to hockey. So yeah, you can use medium interfacing, non-woven, but my advice is to try woven. It does make it slightly thicker and more durable. So yeah, so you need to interface your spine part, which is that piece there. You need to do, right, so I've kind of prepped these already. Ignore the prep, I will go through the prep next week. You'll need to do 2 pieces of mesh binding. So that's this part here on top of your mesh. You need to, and that's got no interfacing on whatsoever. Then you'll need, so you've got your slip pocket here. You'll need, so I've used part of the mix panel for this on both of those. So I've used both of those, and I've used some standard spot on lining pieces, and all 4 pieces are interface, and once again I've used G700 Vaseline. Obviously you got your mesh. So a lot of people are saying, well, what's mesh? Right, so Emma, one of the admin group administrators, actually popped up a link to YouTube, to Amazon, I think it is, to where to buy it from. So it's actually by Annie, so Annie Sews, and you can buy it in packs. She does actually quite a range of colours. Obviously I know it's going to be back to front, I do apologise. And you only need a pack of 18 to 54. Believe it or not, you'll get so much out of this. And there is a bag coming out later on in the year that's got quite a lot of this involved in it, in the pockets. So yeah, if you want to make that bag in the future, then I advise to get this, if you understand where I'm coming from. And the good thing is she does loads of different colours. She does like pinks, purples, bright greens, blues, greys. I like my grey. But whites, blacks. Yeah, so she does a range of colours. And then you'll need to make to cut out your pockets. So you'll need 4 outer pieces and you'll need 4 lining pieces. So I've just basically gone for the same colour. So you've got 4 which I've put interfacing on, and then 4 lining pieces which I've got interfacing on. I got bright pink mesh. I wanted pink mesh, but the place where I got my mesh from only had the grey in at the time, so I was a bit gutted. But no, I'm happy with the grey because it goes with the actual colour scheme that I've chosen for the actual panel. So right, so that's the inner pocket part. So we are not touching the inner pocket part today, so I'm going to pop all this to one side. Okay, so we're going to go for the outer part now, which is this part here and the see-through pocket area as well. Right, so for the outer part, right, so you can actually cut this into one piece if you wanted to. So where I've said the main body outer main fabric, I've said cut 2 pieces at 7 3/4 by 10 3/4 in the blog post, and you need 2 of those. The reason why I'm saying you need 2 of those is because I've actually used 2 of the images from the mixed. Could I use the netting? In fact, you use. Oh, Susie, that's a good point. Yeah. If it's got. Yeah, because my wedding dress, I needed a high dense netting to go underneath my wedding dress, so it's puffy. So if it's a high dense, then yeah. But if it's a soft netting, I would say no. But yeah, that's a good question, Susie. I would actually, you could use it, yeah, as long as it's a really heavy netting, rather than a light netting, because you can get a thinner net that goes under a wedding dress or a prom dress. So yeah, that's a good question actually, and you can buy that in larger pieces from the fabric shops and stuff like that. So yeah, that's a really good question. Right, going back to the main. Right, so going back to the main outer body, I've actually said to cut 2 pieces. Now, you don't have to cut 2 pieces if you don't want to. You can cut it in one complete piece, but you need to take off 1/2 inch on the long edge. Or you can just do me and cut 2 pieces. I've cut 2 pieces because obviously I want the sewing machine to be one going up and one going down, so when I close it, it's the right way. So I've cut 2 pieces, and I've cut the 2 pieces from the mixed panel that I've just ordered this morning, so I'm so happy with that. Right, so you also need, what I was saying, the top of the clear pocket, which is this strip going across here, and you'll need 2 pieces, and you'll need to interface both of those 2 pieces. All the measurements are listed in the actual blog post, and once this video is over, this live video, I will put it up in the description, both of the blog posts, plus event this weekend, there will be that video going live on YouTube with a blog post, so I will actually pop all that information as well, so that sew along will be on YouTube by the weekend as well. Right, so then you'll need what I've called the clear, the binding for the clear pocket. So that's this part here. Now you do need to bind it, because if you, there's some machines, some presser foots struggle to go over clear vinyl, so you do need quite to put some fabric at the top, and also you need some fabric so it covers up the zip, so you can't see the zip inside. So you've got 2 pieces of that, and that's not interfaced. Right, so you got your clear vinyl. Right, so I'm using leftover from sewing quarter. My vinyl was actually so folded, you can iron it, by the way. So I fused all my interface in to the corresponding pieces, and then I basically put this on my board and then put a pressing cloth on top, turned my iron off, let it slightly cool down, and then basically pressed all over it just for a split few seconds. It will go quite flimsy to start off with, but it basically stiffens up again, and then all the creases have dropped out. Believe it or not, I had a crease mark going all the way through this, and I thought, oh no, how am I going to get that basically out? So you can press it out. So you need one of these, and you'll need your lining piece, which you can't really see, but it's the behind the actual clear pocket, and that is interfaced as well. Right, so a hairdryer does work, yeah, it does. I just find for quickness the iron with a pressing cloth and making sure the iron's turned off, that it works just as fine. You'll need your foam. So the foam is cut bigger than what the actual finished product is. There is a reason for that. So if you're not cutting out the panel, so if you are not using the panel as the outer front, there is nothing stopping you cutting those pieces bigger and then basically putting it on top of the foam and quilting it. So that's the reason why I've made the foam slightly longer and wider, so you can actually do some quilting. If you're using the panel, which is the sewing machine, you can't quilt, because by the time you've quilted it will shrink, and when you come to put in the middle page, which is this one here, there won't be this gap here which you need. So yeah, so think about, if you're going to use your own stash, you can make it bigger and wider and do some quilting, and then cut it down to the lining part measurement within the actual blog post. So that's, if you're going to quilt, you then eventually need to cut it down to the main body lining measurement. So that's 15 inches by 10 3/4 inches, but that's only if you're quilting it. Right, so you'll need your 4 zips. So I'm using off the roll, and you'll need, I've got this because I'm always losing the button pieces. So so you got the cover button, or an ordinary button, and some elasticated elastic, yeah. Right, so I'm gonna jump on to making the bag. Right, so today we're only making, so we're going to sew the front part and the back part together. We're going to attach it to the foam. We're going to attach the back lining, which is the fabric underneath, and we're going to make this the clear pocket. Then next week we will do the binding. So I'll teach you how to make some binding. So we do the binding. We add the actual elastic. Then we will start making the main pocket, the inner pocket inside. And then the final week is we will bind those together and then stitch it all together to make sure it's all in one book shape. Right, so so first of all you'll need your 2 main outer pieces, and I'm going to bring the camera down now. Right, Right, I'm hoping everybody can see this and what I'm going to be doing and stuff. Can you actually see this, or I'm just hopefully right, so you got your two. If you I'm basically doing this tutorial as you are using the mix panel, right? So if anybody's not using the mix panel and you hate binding, right, I will show you some easy ways of binding. Trust me, I will show you some really easy ways. If you're using not the mix panel and you're using a stash, your own fabric stash, please, if you have any questions, ask them as you're making it, and I will definitely answer. So when you come to make the actual book itself, I will physically answer any questions. Just message me and stuff like that. Right, so I've got the two sewing machines pointing the right way at the moment. I'm going to marry those up together, and they're still pointing the same way. Right, so the seam allowance that I'll be doing for the whole project is 1/4 inch, not my normal standard seam allowance. The reason why I've done 1/4 inch is to do with the binding at the later steps. So I'm going to clip the bottom edge, so that's where, if I open this up, the bottom of the sewing machine edge, so it's this edge here. So I'm just going to clip that together. Right, so I'm going to make sure my stitch length is a 2.4. Right, so I've got a size 16 needle in. Oh, let's just got a size 16 needle, and I'm going to leave my walking foot on because you know me, I'm super lazy, completely lazy. I'm just sort out my, there you go. Right, so I'm going to sew 1/4 inch here. Right, so I'm just going to move some of this stuff. Right, I'm going to open up the seam because we want that seam to be flat, so I'm going to actually open it up and give it a good press. And I'm going to press it on both sides to set that seam open. You definitely need to make sure that seam is open for when you basically sew the binding, the actual spine on. You'll have a bit of bulk, and to be fair, you need to take that bulk away, so definitely open up that seam. So the next thing you need to do is get your foam, and now we're going to pop this in the center of the foam. So you'll have foam all the way around, that's fine. Now you can pin it if you want to all the way around. I'm not going to. I'm going to base stitch, so I'm making my stitch length for number 5 or a 4, depending on what machine you're using. And I'm going to stitch all the way around 1/4 inch, well, just under 1/4 inch away from the edge of that fabric. And I'm just going to and at the where you've started and finished, make sure you reverse your stitches. Right, so I'm going to get an old pair of scissors. Don't ever use on foam, don't ever use your proper dressmaking scissors, because foam can eventually blunt your scissors, and as much as you go and sharpen them, it basically doesn't do the job, and it won't get them back to the factory standards that they were when they left the factory. Right, so I'm just going to trim, and I'm just trimming right up to where that fabric is, and I'm trimming all the way around. You're not trimming it back like I normally tell you. I tell you to trim it back to the sewn line. I'm not going to trim it back to the sewn line on this project. You need something for your binding. When you finish this part and you put the binding on, you'll need something for your binding to wrap around. So I am not trimming it back to the sewn line. I'm just trimming it back to the fabric. Now, if you have quilted this bit, because you can quilt, but not obviously if you're using the mixed panel. I need to stress that if you're using the mixed panel, please do not quilt, because the fact that the measurements will be all out. But if you are quilting your own stash and making this part bigger, you will notice that there will be hardly any foam left around. Right, so basically you've got foam attached to it now, and yeah, and like I've done is, I'm hoping you can really see this, I've only cut it away to the actual fabric side. I've not trimmed it back like I normally do on the actual on my other patterns. So the next bit you need to do is get your lining fabric. Let me just take that pin out. So we're going to pop the foam and the lining together. So I've got pieces of thread. I've got pieces of thread on it, so I'm just pulling that off. Right, so you'll notice now that your lining fabric will basically be right to the edge of where that foam is. So got the foam side, which is what I'm calling the wrong side at the moment, and then you've got the wrong side of your lining, and you're going to pop that on top, and I'll bring you down again. Right, so I'm just going to put some clips all the way around. If I'm missing any questions, I know Susan and Princess are on, and I don't know if Emma is. They're answering as much as they can, and if they can't answer it, I will basically answer the questions at the end of the actual, once I've come offline. So I'm just going all the way around, clipping those pieces together. Right, so now I need to base stitch this lining piece of fabric to the main outer fabric. So I'm just going to sew just over 1/8 of an inch away from the edge all the way around. I'm keeping to the stitch length of number 5. I knew that would come undone. Right, so I'm just gonna stitch all the way around, making sure I reverse stitch at the start and at the end. Right, back to my ugly mug. Right, so that's attached. So that is basically what you get. Is that the same Becky was selling by the meter? Yes, it was. That is the fabric I was selling by the meter. It is coming back, and I'm going to get some of the animal prints made into continuous fabric. I want to thank you. I didn't think anybody would buy the continuous fabric because of the price, obviously, because I got it as low as I could. And people, it was the best seller out of everything that I was put on the panel order. So yeah, I really appreciate everybody supporting me on that. It brought quite a lot of tears to my eyes when I was tallying up this morning. So yeah. So yeah, that is the continuous fabric. The sewing machine's quite large. I wanted it quite large because I know full well some people are making dresses out of this fabric too. So yeah, and obviously if the sewing machine was quite small, they wouldn't be able to see the sewing machines. Anyway, back to the tutorial. Right, so I'm going to pop this to one side. And we're going to get your clear fabric and your top binding pieces. Right, so the top binding pieces, obviously it comes open, but we need to do the 2 raw edges into the center on the wrong side. So I'm just going to give this a quick press because it's come undone. Right, so yeah, so as it stands, it comes, when you cut it out, it is, I think it's 1 1/4, I think I've said. And then you just fold the 2 long edges into the center, press that, because that is kind of your finished product. And that's going to be for the top of your, I'm really hoping you can see this. It's just a clear window. Right, so you got a long side and you got 2 long sides and 2 short sides. We're going to be working on the 2 short sides, not the long sides. Right, so quilter's tape, sorry, you will need this on this project, especially when it comes to the mesh and when it comes to the clear plastic vinyl. You will need this. Don't pin the mesh. If you pin, the pins fall out anyway, so there's no point of pinning in mesh. Basically, you can clip. There's no harm in clipping, but you know I love this stuff. I've actually written a letter to try and get sponsored for this, so yeah, so hopefully I will get sponsored. Right, so I'm gonna bring the camera back down. Right, so on the, oh, you're really not gonna see this. Right, so on the one short end, we are going to pop some quilter's tape on top and stick that down, or wash away tape, depending on what manufacturers you've got. We are going to peel this back and off. Right, so we're going to get one of these pieces of binding. So you need to, when you are pressing the two edges to the wrong side into the centre, you really do need to make sure it's equal to 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so this 1/4 of an inch closest to the top, obviously this is wrong side pointing up at the moment, it won't be once I turn it over. We are going to flip it over and just stick 1/4 of an inch on to that. So as you can see, I'm hoping you can see this, the vinyl only comes to where that center meeting point is of the two binding pieces. Right, so I'm just going to stitch 2 stitch lines, one as close as I can to the edge of the binding where it meets the clear, and then just one a bit further up at 1/8, and I'm going to stitch at stitch length 3, number 3. Now if you're finding that your foot is sticking to the vinyl, because the vinyl was underneath the foot at one point, at this point, if you've got some tissue paper, i.e. shoebox tissue paper, you can put some tissue paper alongside this binding and it will help, or run the Japanese masking tape, washi tape, run a strip of washi tape alongside the binding, and then basically your presser foot won't stick to this clear vinyl. If you're finding the clear vinyl is sticking to your bed, your machine bed, if you put your hand underneath it as you're sewing, it will stop it and basically it will run neatly through. So the next thing we need to do is grab one of your zips. Now I've told you to either buy all the same length of zips. It's just basically easier to get you to do that, or on quilter on the continuous tapes, just cut 12. Right, so I'm going to flip this over, so this is wrong side facing up, and we're going to run quilter's tape along this edge of the top of the binding. Now my binding is overhanging at this point. Don't worry, we will trim that back. And I'm going to peel off that backing tape. Right, now the zip needs to be pointing up, and you've got to work out which way you want the zip pull, whether you want it left to right or right to left. I normally go left to right. I just had to think about that. But yeah, so I'm going to stick that piece on, and I'm sticking it quite close to the zip coil. I've just noticed I haven't done my second row of stitches, so I'll do that in a minute. I'm sticking it quite close to the zip coil, which is the centre bit, but to make sure that your zip can still work, just pull it open and close it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is, first of all, do that line of stitching that I should have done, which is the double amount, and then I'm just going to stitch a row of stitches next to the coil. Now at this point you might want to put your zip foot on. I'm going to be lazy and keep my walking foot on. Still a stitch length 3, number 3, low. There you go. And I'm stitching as close as I can to where that fold is of that binding. And I'm just going to do 2 more rows of stitching, the one row that I missed before and another row 1/8 of an inch away from that sewn line that I've just sewn. So by the time you finish putting this binding strip on, it will be 4 rows of stitching on this binding. Now you're wondering why I've got so much stitch, rows of stitches. It's to hold the zip into place, because believe it or not, you do actually use I've put quite a lot of EPP, sewn EPP pieces together in mine, and it stretches, the vinyl does slightly, so I'm making sure that the zip can't come away from that binding, so I'm just double doing it basically. Right, so I'm going to repeat the same process on this end here, so I'll just quickly do that. Getting another zip ready. So I'm putting some tape at the end of that short edge of the vinyl. Peeling off the backing. Sticking the 1/4 inch on top, and there'll be a 1/4 inch overhanging off that edge. So like you can see, I've gone to the centre. I'm just going to flip that over. I'm going to do all the sewing at once. I'm going to run some more quilter's tape along the top of that binding. Now if you've come in halfway through, don't worry, you can once the live's finished, you can actually watch this video. It will be in the group. And if you're a YouTube person who likes watching more on YouTube or want to put it up on your main TV, I will be putting it onto YouTube later on today. Right, so I'm just gonna stick and I'm just going to do my 4 rows of stitching here. I haven't reversed my stitches, it's not needed because we will be sewing this onto the actual main outer body, which then will basically seal the ends off. Another one. So what is everybody, when everybody's made one, what will you be storing in it? I've got 2 EPP projects on at the moment. So one EPP project is going to be in my blue one, and one EPP project is going to be in the pink one. So and one more row. Right, so my other theory is that you can actually, once you've made this, you've got the techniques of making it larger, so there's nothing stopping you making a really large version, and if you're a quilter you can keep small quilt blocks in it. So the world is your oyster. So yeah, so just think about it. Once you've got the theory of how to make this, you can then basically make it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, width-wise and length-wise, so you can carry bigger tools in it. So bearing in mind, this is only just basically a pointer of where you can marry it up and make it bigger. Right, so the next thing we need to do is put the zips into the center or away from the edges basically, and then what we're going to do is just sew over at the ends to stop any anything coming off. On here I'll sew over this piece here because this bit's going to be cut off anyway. I'm just doing that to stop the zip pull from coming off. So I'm just basically sewing over it a few times. Don't want to see my ugly mug. Excuse me, I do apologise, I got a cough. So I've done it on this one, and then I'm just going to do it on these ones, on this end as well. You can see how fast it is actually coming together. It really does come together quite quickly. And you know what my husband said to me? He goes, I can't believe you're doing this as a free pattern. I said, well, I'm not doing it actually as a pattern, but it's a free project. Because believe it or not, I bet you somebody will go out there and design something similar and make it into a pattern that you would have to buy. So, coronavirus. No, right, I'll tell you a story. My husband works for a big bank and they all had to fill out forms yesterday about the coronavirus and if they can work from home. I don't want my husband here while I'm working. He's a distraction and he nicks my computer. So no, he can suffer from that end where the bank is. But no, I understand. The coronavirus is everywhere at the moment. And yeah. So I'm just going to trim off the extra pieces here. And I'm trimming it back to level with the actual clear plastic vinyl. I'm using old scissors as well because I'm cutting through zips and plastic. And that bit there. Wow, it's messy around here. Right, so the next bit we need to do is the top clear pocket piece. So where did I put that? Oh, there. Right. So the clear top pocket piece. So you got two pieces. Taking one piece and you're going to fold it right sides together, marrying up the two long edges, and we're just going to press that. So you've got, now they're half the size of what they were. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we're going to run some quilter's tape along the top of the zip that has not got the binding on. Then we're going to peel off the backing tape. And then the next thing we need to do is the folded edge of the top pocket piece. Right, so where can you get the clear vinyl from, Jennifer? Right, so I'm using leftover sewing quarter stuff, but Sewn by Annie actually does some. Pearl-Tex does some. But if you've got a Dunelm's close to you, this stuff is basically like tabletop wipe down. So some Dunelm's, you can actually buy it on the roll, or eBay. Yeah, eBay. So as long as it's quite thin stuff, I would say this is like 0.5 mil, 0.5 thick. So it's not that thick at all. So if you can get some thin stuff, but Dunelm's do sell that. It's basically just tabletop plastic covers that they use in schools to wipe down the tables once the kids have been painting and stuff. You don't have to use the plastic if you don't want to. You can actually use a what's it called, a fabric finish, but you got to bear in mind you'll need two pieces of fabric, obviously one for the lining, which will be the back. I saved the packaging from sheets. Oh yeah, so if you buy a pair of curtains, it's the same plastic that comes with the folded up curtains or the bed sheets, like the really strong bed sheets. Yeah, good point, Susan. Yeah. Right, so going back to the tutorial, the folded edge, not this part, the folded edge, I'm just going to pop this as close as I can to that zip coil in the centre. And you've guessed it, we're going to stitch as close as we can to the actual zip. And at this point you don't need 2 stitch lines, you only need 1. Using a stitch length 3, number 3. And as you can see, I've got that now as a finished zip. I'm just going to do this end here. Right, and so I'm going to warn you, on tomorrow you'll see a live video come up. There'll be nothing to watch apart from my sewing machine. I've got some new equipment, and hopefully next week I can film the correct way. So I'm just pre-warning you, you don't have to watch the sewing machine tomorrow. I'm just testing out the new equipment to make sure I can get it all correct and working as I need it to. You might see it next week filmed the correct way. If not, don't worry, I'm working. I think I've got all the right equipment now to film the correct way. Right, oh, that's not stuck into place properly. There you go. Right, so I'm just going to stitch again, opening up that stitch, that zip. Does anybody struggle getting the pull past the... I do, because I've got chubby little fingers, so I always get a bit stuck, but some people don't, so... Lisa Lamb in the house, give her a wave everybody. Lisa Lamb in the house. Hi Lisa. Right, so I'm just bringing the zips into the centre. Right. My ugly mug. Right, so going back to the outer body piece, we need to pop this on top, but you'll notice that it's larger, so it's bigger than what actually needed. So you need to fold this right sides together, and what we're going to do is find the centre. Don't worry about it, we're creasing it, we're going to be sewing down this crease anyway, so we're going to just fold it and get that centre. Then we're going to get this piece, and we're working not on this side, we're working on the the one that's one complete piece. And we're going to fold it in the centre. Oh, get rid of that bit. Thread. And I'm just going to snip it where the centre will be. Blunt scissors, so that's no good. And there. Right. Then I'm just going to pop 2 pins. So I'm going to pop a pin where that mark is. And pop a pin where that mark is. Okay. That's better. Right, so now we're going to pop. So we're going to call this the wrong side. And obviously the wrong side of your vinyl is where you can see the zip, the back of the tape. We're going to pop the fold, right on where those 2 pin marks are. Okay, and then we're going to open it out like so. Like so. Going to get a clip and just pop some clips on. Right, so what you should have now is your 2 pins. Obviously that's where your folded part is of your vinyl. And you should have, let's just make that better, that's it. You should have still a slight overhang at the top of that piece. What we're going to do is bring the zips back into the centre. We're going to clip down these 2 long edges. So I'll just quickly do that and show you. Right, so I've clipped down the 2 long edges and we're just going to sew within the seam allowance. So remember your seam allowance is Jenny Jackson in the house. Hi Jenny. So basically you need to sew within the seam allowance, and remember the seam allowance is 1/4 inch. So I'm sewing 1/8 inch away. I'm using a basin stitch of a stitch length number 5. So I'm coming up to where the needle is. I'm going to have to take that pin out at the moment. And do the other side as well. Then you're going to flip this completely over, and you're going to sew along this edge here on the actual foam piece using a big stitch length. And then we're going to do the same on this side. So I'm going to rotate it round and do this edge. And you'll need some washi tape or some tissue paper. We're going to flip this over, work out where those centre marks were. I'm just going to pop a little pin in. It doesn't matter because the binding will be there and the spine will on week 3 when we put the spine in. I'm just going to run some washi tape or masking tape along that centre. I'm going to do a few strips of that because the next thing we need to do is stitch from the other side, and you might find the clear vinyl will stick to your machine bed. So I've just done 3 strips of that. I'm going to flip it over, and then you see where the join line is, where we sewed the 2 pieces together. We're going to stitch right in the ditch. Now some people don't like stitching in the ditch when it comes to quilting, so it doesn't matter if you go over it. I'm not a brilliant stitch in the ditch person. I'm going down to a stitch length 3.5. That's a number 3.5, and I'm just going to reverse my stitch. Then I'm going to flip this back over and peel off this washi tape. So the good thing about washi tape is it's like tissue paper but sticky. So there you go. It does actually come off, you just got to take your time. My washi tape's quite sticky, so if you're finding that your washi tape is quite sticky, you might want to just run the strips over some fabric before you actually stick it down. It takes the tackiness down. But yeah, that's done. So the next thing we're going to do is just trim back these parts here. And if you've got any overhang of the zip here, just going to trim it back. Right. Right, so that's week 1 completed. It's so easy. Obviously you can see that you've got 2 pockets. The binding will come next week, obviously, because I want to spend a bit of time on how to make the binding, because we are going to use straight of grain, which is salvage to salvage binding. It doesn't have to be on the bias, which means that you're not wasting fabric or anything like that. And also we're going to do it like a quilter would do it, so rather than double fold, it's going to be a single fold, and then you roll it over and then stitch on the top side. But yeah, as you can see, it's starting to come together. This, even like my husband said, you can actually just leave it like this. Obviously you would have to bind it, but you could leave it like this to carry your projects, extra projects in to and from classes and stuff like that, or like keep your cotton wheels in there or your EPP. But yeah, so this is week 1. Yeah, so yeah. Right, so any questions I would that I've missed, I will answer once the live's finished. I want to say a personal thank you for everybody that's supported me on my new pattern release and the basically buying the panels. I've ordered the panels. I've got to pay for them now. Yeah. So what machine do you use? Right. So I use the Elna Excellence Pro 720, but I used to actually sew on a Janome Memorycraft 6600. But if you can get a machine that's heavy, and you can get one that, if I just bring it down here, you can get one that's got pressure release, and you can get one that's is capable of taking the walking foot, and got quite a large throat space. Throat space is a key thing for bag makers and quilters, because they need that area. If you can get a machine that's heavy duty and stuff like that, I personally have sewn on really small machines, basic cheap machines, and I've made PU bags. It's down to whether it's got a pressure release on it, a presser foot release. You can put a walking foot on. It's down to your needles. So you don't have to buy an expensive sewing machine to be able to sew bags. You just got to take into factor that you might not be able to do a complete PU bag. You can do a part PU and part I take it you can sew through layers pretty well. This machine sews through leather and quite thick, substantial. This is the reason why I was I'm looking for another, so I don't. Yeah, you've got a Juki Industrial, haven't you? So yeah, I'm actually getting rid of my industrial sewing machine because I hardly use it. I really use this one all the time now because it sews leather. Yeah, so yeah. It's down to personal opinions at the end of the day. My advice is go to the actual dealers and take what you normally sew. So if you take a bag, if you sew bags or sew quilts, take it to the dealers and listen to what they've got to say, because believe it or not, most of them, Janome HD9, absolutely love them. I tried one out a couple of weeks ago and I must admit I do love it, but it's only a straight stitch. This has got 186 stitches. It's also got a special plate for delicate fabrics, so if I want to dress make, I can dress make. So yeah, their HD9 is brilliant, but it's only got that one stitch. But there is the £2,500 one that is industrial strength but small enough for home, and I do like that one as well. So yeah, but I'm not buying a new machine. Right, so thanks for watching. This is week number 1 for the sew along, and if you have any questions, ask as you're cutting out. Just keep asking in the group. Yeah, and I'll see you all next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.